What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today it is going to be day 1 of 2 of this 3-round mock draft with trades. And just like the NFL draft, I split this up into 2 days. Round 1's on day 1, rounds 2 and 3 are on day 2, so that we can have some good football discourse and not actually rush through this. It's a live mock draft, so I hope you guys do enjoy the thought process. If you do see something that's wrong, be a dick, just don't be a dick about it. I love to be able to hear what I'm doing wrong because I try to explain it so that we can continue crafting it, carving it down, and being able to sculpt it into the mock draft that we really want, that has, the best amount of information. We don't like those mock drafts that make absolutely no sense. So I love you guys for being able to, work with me on that. But if you are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. We're on the best growth curve in history. So I love it for the show. The big goal is 20K by the draft. But, right now, let's just get to 16, 17, 18, and just enjoy the journey along the way. Again, make sure to comment because I've responded to every comment, 37,000 of them since October of 2021. And it's the best part of the job. But at number 1 overall, we have the Tennessee Titans. And thinking about what I'm a little bit confused in terms of what I really want to do at the top here, but I think I'm pretty confident on a couple facts. And I think Borgonzi really likes his picks. He likes his value. And he also ended up seeing what happens when your team that you're AGMing for is getting absolutely eviscerated at the line of scrimmage. So it leads me to believe that it's either going to be Abdul Carter or it's going to be a trade down. And honestly, I do think that there's a strong possibility that you could do that trade down. But, the question is, do you think that the Browns would end up taking Abdul Carter if he's sitting there at number 2 overall? That's what gets me bothered, right? I just don't think that Abdul would be, because we're going to be doing a Myles Garrett trade, just FYI. I don't think that he's going to be passable at that point. If you don't have Garrett, you're going to go after Carter. So I think that with the Titans sitting here, and quarterback absolutely should be a focus. But when you look at the quarterbacks on the board, the best fit for the team is Shedeur Sanders. And I'm not taking him at 1. Cam Ward has the higher ceiling. You could end up talking about him at number 1. Shedeur Sanders, he's somebody that I would think is not necessarily the quarterback that would have the ROI of a number 1 overall pick if he hits his ceiling. And to be fair, I'm pretty pessimistic on the class. I just don't think that, especially my inside sources say that Callahan has a pretty long leash. I don't think he's going to be pressured into taking a quarterback that he doesn't necessarily want over Borgonzi getting the guy who they think could be a generational pass rusher. We're going to be going after Abdul Carter here at number 1 overall. Leaving the Cleveland Browns here at number 2, first off, we are going to be doing a Myles Garrett trade. And it's going to be essentially a 2-parter because I've already thought about this one quite a bit. We've tested out a billion different theories in terms of what we're going to do with Myles Garrett, right? And something I do want to note here is that Denzel Ward will probably be requesting a trade, and I think he gets traded at the trade deadline in the season, not in this draft. So I just want to put that out there. But there were 2 teams I was legitimately considering for this episode, and this is one of the few things I thought about beforehand. And I just feel so comfortable with Philadelphia being that team to do it. I know that what I did last time did not really add up in terms of value-wise, because I think Bryce Huff could be moved on from. The fact is the dude didn't play a single snap in the Super Bowl. But I don't know if they're going to fully give up on him. It is what it is, but I don't think he'd be a part of this trade. I don't think Cleveland Browns are going to want to handle that contract, which was excellent feedback from you guys. But I think the Bills and Commanders are the leading team right now in terms of odds, but they just don't really have the draft capital, and they have noticeable needs at a lot of spots. I'd feel a little uncomfortable being able to put the Commanders in that situation, especially with Dan Quinn being so good at getting the maximum value out of his edge rushers, right? So I'm going to be making this with the Philadelphia Eagles. And what I think is that it will take the first 2 picks. And I think it will take a 2nd and a 3rd next year. Here's the thing. We're going to end up sending back a couple picks here, whether it's 165, 192, 192, 100. You can mess around with that. Most likely 98% chance. Not going to affect the mock draft at all. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to say 192, 200 just to be able to restructure the day 3 capital of the Eagles. But this pick is not the Eagles pick. There is a phantom Jets pick in here that is not registered by PFF. And I think it's super key for us to talk about that. You guys will have an extra third round pick in 2026. So that's why I'm being a little bit more willy-nilly. You guys could end up, I mean, maybe you could do a 1 and a 3 and then a 2 and a 3. But again, we're talking about these picks essentially also being similar value at the end of their respective rounds. Like maybe if you do the 1 and 2 this year, you end up basically shuffling the board here. Actually, I don't mind this. If I'm going to be honest, I do think we end up taking out those day 3 capital items. You're going to say like, oh my God, like we're not getting a second round pick out of this. It's true, but this is going to be the Jets' third round pick. So at least you'll be getting pretty much a high third round pick as well. So it will be actually structured properly. And remember, Myles Garrett has an essential no trade clause by saying he's not going to sign with a team that trades for him that he doesn't want, right? And that does reduce the leverage more than what I think we want to accept. And so you can end up retooling this all you want. Maybe you can toss in an extra pick, do what you please. But I'm going to be pretty happy sending Myles Garrett to Philadelphia for a first, a third, and then a second, and then New York Jets third round pick in 2026 via that Hassan Reddick trade. But regardless, the Browns have traded away their most valuable asset. They got a good amount of return on investment for it as well. A 1, 3, 2, and then essentially another late 2 is a really solid return for someone who is his age and, wants to go ring chasing. But we're going to go Travis Hunter here. You might say, hey, why not go Cam Ward? I understand quarterback's absolutely a position you could target here, but I think with Denzel Ward also being on the fritz, you're going to need a corner, and you're going after best player available at the same time. It's a win-win for your franchise in the long run. Deion's not going to allow Travis to go. Like, Deion doesn't actually have that type of leverage. No disrespect, but Travis is going to be an absolute baller there for Colorado, or for Cleveland. He's going to be the savior, essentially, of Cleveland as well. He's going to be the focal point of Cleveland, and that's kind of what you want. So I'm going to say that Travis goes at number 2. Number 3, the Giants. This is going to be an easy one. Cam Ward. I think it's the smartest move. I really do. I think it's the smartest move for the franchise is to go after their number 1 guy and have somebody like someone ended up bringing up this the other day. Basically, we're attaching ourselves to a very distant Brian Daboll with Josh Allen, but we also need to recognize that he won Coach of the Year with Daniel Jones. Like, he has a really strong pedigree, just a recent stumbles here and there. I totally believe in him to be able to get the most out of Cam Ward because he really hasn't had a good quarterback since Josh Allen. And Josh Allen was not that great when he first came into the NFL. I do want us to remember that. Like, his mechanics were really off, and he ended up continuing to work on it. Daboll worked with him, and then they ended up making Josh Allen into the guy he is today. New England Patriots at number 4. I've heard some news that there might be some trade back opportunities here. The problem is with whom? I don't think the Raiders are going to want to use their draft capital to move up. I don't see anybody necessarily worth it at this point. And then you look at the Jaguars, don't see anything. The Jets could try to move up here for Shedeur Sanders, but at that point, I don't know. You're going to lose out on definitely one of the most valuable pieces. Like, do you want to move back and take the risk that you have to go Tetro and McMillan? But even then, Tetro will probably go 5. So, what happens if, the Raiders saying, hey, we're going to go after Mason Graham, get a good penetrating defensive interior? Like, are you going to be super happy with Will Johnson? I think the answer would be yes. I'm kind of riddling it for myself there, but the Jets also don't have a ton of draft capital. The goal would be to jump the Raiders, right? The Raiders could send their third round pick here, move up with the Patriots, and have a good time. But not really great draft capital for the Jets. If we are to, because I actually have it in an off screen over here, if I'm looking at the trade value of these picks here, the Jets are at 1,500, Patriots at 1,800. You need 300 value, which is number 60 or higher. Just going to be honest, that's not something I'm going to spend. And so I think that the Patriots are going to be stuck here, and they're going to have to pick. And I think that's going to be perfectly fine because Mason Graham, with Christian Barmore's lack of consistent health, is going to be an amazing addition. And you have, in my opinion, enough picks to be able to, actually strengthen your team without having to be too worried about the consequences. And number 5, we have the Jaguars, and I've been very confident in this move, and I'm going to continue being confident in this pick. I'm going Tetairoa McMillan out of Arizona. Ended up regrading him, and I used to have him at 17 based on his role-specific grade. I no longer do that because his actual overall grade finally ended up matching what I actually thought he was worth, which is great. It's a good test to see, hey, are my eyes actually agreeing with my brain? And for once it did. So that's a good sign. At number 6 for the Las Vegas Raiders, we have a quarterback here in Shedeur Sanders, but I want to bring you guys in on a vision, like a beautiful vision. And that vision is actually putting a quarterback with a coach that he belongs with, right? I'm not talking about the Jets with their quarterback situation. I'm talking about Will Howard going with Chip Kelly. And no, I'm not talking about it here at number 6. But the vision is a late second, early third round pick on Will Howard. Is that going to be worth more than Shedeur Sanders here and whatever we can get at that pick? I don't think you can say no to that because I don't see a gap between Shedeur Sanders and Will Howard being that big, especially when you have Chip Kelly as your offensive coordinator. So with all that being said, I am going to stick to my casual top 7 here at this point and go Will Johnson out of Michigan, who, outside of top speed concerns, like recovery speed, this dude's an absolute savage, one of the smartest corners that I've seen. There's a chance he does end up really falling, but I just don't see, unless the medicals don't check out, this dude was pretty much most people's number 1 player in the class coming to the year. Just had a little bit of a bum year because he wasn't fully healthy. Siobhan Ravel doesn't get bummed for that, but all of a sudden, somebody who had multiple pick 6s on the year and was able to take over key games is just saying. At number 7, though, for the Jets, I think this is a quick and easy one, which is why I said my casual top 7. I do think Shedeur Sanders would be their selection. There's not much hope there in New York. And again, Daddy Sanders won't let Shedeur go to the Jets. Why not? They have a young left tackle. They have, honestly, a pretty solid interior offensive line. Morgan Moses can be brought back with his old aging ass for one more year if you need to. And you got yourself, actually, Garrett Wilson there as a primary target. I think that is a really solid foundation. And to be fair, Garrett Wilson stylistically could be very similar, obviously better, than Travis Hunter. I think it works out. You have a key defense with a defensive coach. I really like how that could end up playing out for y'all. At number 8, we have my least favorite pick in the entire draft outside of the Cowboys, and that is the Carolina Panthers. But this one actually might be even more of my biggest pain in the ass pick because everybody says, trade back, Alex, trade back, trade back, trade back. And the question is, who is worth trading up for? Ashton Genty is a valid one. But the problem is, you look at the opportunity cost. Would the Bears want to spend picks to move up? No. Would the Cowboys, without their 4th round pick, want to move up? No. And so I just don't see it as a legitimate opportunity for a team to see the value in moving up because there is a cost, right? If we're just going to say, oh, we just flip picks and no one gives up value, first off, the fuck. But second off, let's just say, imagine that it's worth it. Maybe we're going to get the same player and it's just a cheaper contract because technically that would be the case. Even then, it's not that desperate. Maybe we could talk about it then. But again, it costs a third, maybe even a 2nd round pick for teams trying to move up a noticeable difference. And that just doesn't make sense. So you can talk about Malachi Starks here as the true dark horse candidate. I'm not going to. I'm going to go after the player who I think is best. Best based on my board is James Pierce. I would also like to toss in Ben Morrison into this equation because I do think Ben Morrison's fantastic. I don't know why I've started hearing news that he might slip into the 3rd round. What the fuck is that? There are people who I absolutely love. And I love them. But they said some shit like that. And I'm starting to lose confidence in you as a corner evaluator. Just put it that way. But we're going to go James Pierce out of Tennessee. I love James Pierce to death. The dude's an absolute savage. He plays like he's 250, 255. Maybe he weighs 243, but I've not seen one person who actually watches film try to refute that James Pierce can hold his ground. Like, he ended up doing it versus Tyler Booker. I'm sorry. The dude's nearly 100 pounds heavier than James Pierce, and he can hold his ground versus him. Don't try to make the size argument with me, because there are dudes who are 260 pounds who cannot hold their ground. They have a shit run anchor, and James Pierce, at 20 pounds lighter, better player, better run defender. So, again, don't make a fool of yourself. Like, watch James Pierce, and if you do, you'll understand the ferocity and the strength that he plays with. He really does remind me a lot of Dallas Turner, and Dallas Turner started turning it on. He's behind a really good group of guys. He's going to end up being one of the best, if not the best in the class, but it's going to be kind of hard with Jared Verse. Jared Verse has been doing fantastic for LA. I'm super happy for him. Number 9 for the New Orleans Saints. I want to throw a curveball here because I've been going Tyler Warren at 9 all day. And you know what? It makes a ton of sense. And it does. It really does make a ton of sense, right? You know, you're looking at an offensive head coach who is coming off. I mean, Alvin Kamara is extended for 2 more years. Like, it does just make sense to go Tyler Warren at 9. But I want to test out a new theory here. You guys know how I roll. And I think it's worth seeing how different, like, how if you just drop a domino, see how it just chain reacts. And Boise State is where Kellen Moore is from. And to be fair, we saw one of the most successful teams in the league, minus injury, in Detroit, have Lightning and Thunder, or Sonic and Knuckles. And you could essentially have that with Kamara, who technically there is an out. I think it's like 26 mil in dead cap, though, which would be fucking ridiculous. But, you know, he is there for 2 more years. There are some void years in there, but he is there for 2 more years. And you're coming off Saquon Barkley. This could be your Saquon. And I want to test it out. Again, I think that the logical choice would be to go after Tyler Warren. But when you are coming from Saquon Barkley and you are in a good tight end class, and I think it's a heavily overrated running back class, we're going to test out the theory. We're going to see what happens. Ashton Genty goes at number 9. And number 10 for the Chicago Bears, without Ashton Genty on the board, I already know my Bears fans are celebrating that I will not take him again. We are in the Dennis Allen era of defense. I could see them going after someone like Mykel Williams here. That would be the hot take. But I think after having such a solidified offensive line, I think that you have to go after offensive line. And thank you guys for being honest, because I know that it's easy to hate, but it's not easy to be able to provide actual criticism and like being like depth in terms of analysis. Like, a lot of people just want to talk shit. For those of you, especially my Bears fans, you guys have done an excellent job at this. You guys actually have football discourse when you disagree, and I love you for that. The left tackle spot is absolutely up for an upgrade. And you can look at, if you cannot acquire a guard in the short run, you could use Josh Simmons as that. And I really do see the potential there as well. So Josh Simmons is going to be the pick if he is, if the medicals check out. Like, he was pre-injury my number 5 player on my board. Again, all the players on my board that end up having a plus next to them had a season-ending injury. So that's a pre-season-ending injury grade. But I do think, he was by far the best true tackle in this class, but also he does have the flexibility, the athleticism, and the frame to work as a guard in the short run. At number 11 for the San Francisco 49ers, Tyler Warren would have been on the table if I have not been hearing news about you guys trying to work out an extension with Kittle. Just again, at number 11, kind of makes sense. I don't see any players that teams would necessarily move up for. I just don't see it, like, based on the price to move up to 11. Now, once we get to 12, 13, like, I think that's where we're going to see a little bit more attention for a move up for Tyler Warren. But here at 11, I think the Niners are happy sticking and picking. And I think that you guys need to go after defensive interior. The question is, do you want to go Walter Nolan, or do you want to go to free agency and be able to sign Milton Williams? I think that with the billion contracts you guys are also probably going to be having to come due, whether that is a Kittle extension, whether it's going to be a Brock Purdy extension, there is certainly going to be some room in there for growth, or for like shifting that cap around. But I do think Walter Nolan, with the explosiveness, and you guys, I have a really good 49ers fan who was talking about the defensive line coaches' preferences. The explosiveness is super key. And if Walter Nolan can keep his balance, I think he's going to be a superstar. And that's kind of like my biggest gripe with him at the moment is the fact that this dude like is almost too powerful for his mind to be able to react. So we're going to leave it there. At number 12 for the Dallas Cowboys, my least favorite pick in the entire draft. I'm going to do something that is unheard of, which is trade out of here, but not trade to 14 because I don't think that's necessary. You got Tyler Warren on the board because, again, we threw that curveball with Ashton Genty there. The NFL does shit that's just not logical. And so I do think if, Kellen Moore sees Ashton as a Saquon level back, could end up working that way. But regardless, I do see a team with a coach that's ballsy as all get out as well. Like, he's been willing to do this before with his previous tenure. I'm looking right at the Denver Broncos. And there is not a better player in this class, in my opinion, than Tyler Warren for the Broncos. And the cost of this would be 2084 and around 3. It technically could just be 20 and 52, but I'm going to be tossing in this instead because I think that's going to be far more valuable. Also, compensatory picks essentially might be able to replenish a 2026 round 3 if need be. So, keep that in mind as well. I think this is going to be a great move. Also for Dallas, it ends up adding a pick that you guys have essentially lost. I personally like that quite a bit. And you also build up some extra future draft capital while you guys are continuing to retool and rebuild. The Broncos have moved up and are selecting Tyler Warren at number 12 overall. Like, great blocker. He's going to be that Joker type because he runs routes very well. He's physical. One of those guys who's always open even if he's guarded. Like, the amount of target share you can give Tyler Warren is absolutely ludicrous. And then he can run the ball. It's crazy. He was like he was one of 2 tight ends, I think, in NCAA history with over 1,000 receiving and 200 plus rushing. So I think that's awesome. At 13 for the Miami Dolphins, could try to trade back here, but there's just not enough. Like, unless you want to trade with the Bengals, which the Bengals are pretty capped on picks, don't like to move up in the first place. I would say the only reason I'd want to move up with the Bengals would be for Ben Morrison, just because I love getting Al Golden, his guy. But I think you got to go old but gold here, everybody. You got to go old but gold. We're going to go Malachi Starks here out of Georgia. He's just, there's a certain point where Malachi has to go. And he sometimes can slip all the way to the mid to late first round. But his talent level as a pure safety is undeniable. And the role that he's going to be taking on here with Javon Holland and or Poyer is going to be massive. Like, that is a very key position in this defense. And number 14 for the Colts, another one that I like to run in because I think you go right down the road. He's young. He's actual corner 1. You're getting a top 5 player here at 14 pre-injury. So I'm going to call it all day. Ben Morrison. Jalen Jones was a big buy guy from that draft. He was a top 64 player, ended up slipping to the 7th round and is now proving to be a true number 2 corner. But I really want to get that true number 1. And to me, Ben Morrison is that. I was not a big Juju Brents guy myself, but Ben Morrison's going to be the guy for me. At number 15 for the Atlanta Falcons, this is key time to trade back. And I know, like, I'm looking at the Cardinals right now, and there are 2 players I'm looking at. It's not Mike Green. I've talked about this on the last episode. And again, I'm not saying this is confirmed, but people who I trust who know Mike Green's background, there are a couple very concerning instances in his past that are massive off the field red flags. And I'll just say I thought there was an actual article online that broke it down, but there's only like a small source that's like talking about it online, which means that I know these people have actually gotten it from like legitimate inside sources. There's something that happened in high school and it ended up happening again at UVA, which is why he left and transferred to Marshall. So I do think it's going to pop up and I do think it's going to drop his stock. So that's why I'm not going to say Mike Green. I ended up mentioning it in some comments before. I'm not going to do the same thing in this video. So you guys can end up going back to yesterday's video and checking that out yourself. Because again, I'm not going to be the one to continue talking about it. I'm just going to say, I'm not saying it's true or not. I'm just saying it's from people who I trust. And that's not information that you just pull out of your ass. So regardless, for the Cardinals, I'm going to say that they're going to try to copy the Eagles. Like, everyone's going to try to copy the Eagles. And how are they going to do that? You either want to get your own Zach Bond or get your own pass rush. So I'm looking at Mykel Williams as a primary option here because also Gannon is from the Philadelphia Bulldogs back in their day. But I'm also looking at, again, that Zach Bond And Zach Bond type would be like Jalen Walker, blitzing capability, solid linebacker in coverage, like just an all-around good player. And so when I'm looking at Jalen Walker, I'm like, damn, there's another team that I know that is losing probably their top linebacker, also probably won't want to pay him, that can absolutely and has out of spite taken down the Cardinals before. And I love the positional flexibility of this player as well. I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks. And it's a cheap trade too, 136, 185 for 15. It's great for the Falcons too. And again, I honestly think getting your own Zach Bond, when looking at the Falcons roster, or not Falcons, excuse me, the Cardinals roster, they're losing, if I'm not mistaken, the 3 linebackers, including 2 of their number 2s, but also Kaiser White, who is a will linebacker, which I think is a perfect role here for Jalen Walker. While Jalen could also play the Ernest Jones, the 4th role there in Seattle. So you have flexibility that I know McDonald's going to love. You have a high floor because he's a great linebacker. And again, we saw what happens with like Zach Bond style players. I could see Jalen Walker having a similar level of impact, and not maybe DPOY, but similar in terms of being a primary contributor to a very strong defense. At 16 for the Arizona Cardinals, I gave you the 2 guys who I think would be beneficial to their roster. I don't see any teams being aggressive at the moment, so I'm going to be going Michael Williams there at 16. At 17 for the Cincinnati Bengals, you guys know me. I like being a douchebag from time to time, and I just ended up moving back with the Falcons. And so I personally am going to love moving up with the team that is going to look for a player that I would love on the Falcons in Jahad Campbell, and that is somebody in their own division in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It'll be super small, 17 to 15, excuse me, was pick 120. This one will be like slightly less. Maybe you toss in a 193. I'm not going to. Maybe you can toss in a future 7 in there. Not going to affect the mock draft, but the Buccaneers are making a small jumperoonie and selecting Jahad Campbell, who is one of my favorite players in this entire class. I was going to take a quick peek to make sure that the trade value was pretty accurate, and honestly, I am pretty damn happy with it. So we're sitting here at pick number 18, and for the Bengals, like, again, we're talking about the Falcons, but you got to look at, I'm still in trade back move for the Falcons. Like, my favorite player got kind of sniped right there in Jahad Campbell. Could have went Jalen Walker at 15, but again, I need those picks, man. They're pretty decimated. With the 2 extra picks, they're doing good, but they had 4 picks. It's just not great. And I still honestly feel like we're in the prime opportunity to have some success here. And with Will Campbell on the board, that's my primary target at 19. And this is going to sound a little ludicrous, but I see a couple teams in here that have a lot of picks, including the Chargers. And you might say, hey, the Chargers move up. They're going to want to go after Colson Loveland, right? It's their guy. It's fine to say that's perfectly reasonable. Excuse me. But this team needs interior offensive line help, y'all. And Harbaugh values the offensive line arguably more than anything. So I'm going to actually make the move up and jump the Cincinnati Bengals, because that's going to be a big competitor to the Chargers. And we're going to dictate what they can end up getting. And for this trade, let's end up taking a quick peek here, because I think 122 as well as some other picks would be able to suffice. I'm going to look at the trade chart as well to be able to understand what on earth to do here. I should drag it over so it just like looks better. But when looking at this, we have pick value 780 up to what did I do? I traded with Tampa Bay, 875. So 780, 875. So is that 95 point differential? That is going to be worth about like a top 100 pick, right? Top 100. But with having 122 available, I'm perfectly happy with that. 122, and then we can end up reinforcing it with another pick. And for me, I see a lot of gap in here between 85 and 244. I'm going to go after 210, maybe 198, but let's just say for argument's sake, 210. So we're going to force this on through. The Falcons get an additional 2 really good picks, and trust me, there's nothing I like there for the Falcons at 18 that's worth it. Will Campbell is going to be the selection there for the Los Angeles Chargers, leaving at 19 the Cincinnati Bengals sitting and saying, what do we want? And It's between defensive edge, because I do think defensive interior. I know that you guys were looking at him at the Senior Bowl, but I think DI is not going to be a first-round need for you. I don't. I like Chris Jenkins. I like McKinley Jackson growing and developing. I could absolutely see you guys trying to go after someone like Jordan Phillips, maybe Josh Farmer, Aeneas Peebles. Like, it just depends on the style of player that you're going to be going for, but I could see you guys trying to grow and develop on that later day 2, day 3 territory. And I think that's a good spot to go. Edge rusher, I absolutely think should be in the equation, but I think the biggest crime is protecting Joe Burrow with that horrible interior offensive line. And I've been trying to find a way, because he's been slipping to the second round in a lot of my mocks, to be able to get Tyler Booker in the first, because his talent level is a first-round player. Even at guard, he's a first-round player. And I'm tired of having him slip. Like, I'm genuinely tired of it. So we're going to have Tyler Booker go at pick 19. Again, you could have gotten Will Campbell if you sticked and picked, but honestly, Tyler Booker, in my opinion, might be a better player than Will Campbell. Will Campbell just provides that positional flexibility. At 20 for the Dallas Cowboys, this is one that I'm running into the podium. We got extra picks for days, and we're still getting Matt Golden. Could end up going Amari and Hampton, but Matt Golden just fits too well. He's literally bounced around from Houston to Austin, and now he's going up to Dallas, and he's essentially replacing Brandon Cooks. At 21 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I usually like to get cute with this pick. Looking at the two best options, it's Amari and Hampton and Emeka Egbuka. I just think at 53, what's going to be available, and it's going to be Cam Scatabo and then probably Jalen Rolls. So are we going to be happy with, Amari and Hampton and Jalen Royals at 100%, or would we rather have Emeka Egbuka and Cam Scatabo? And I think that most people will say Emeka Egbuka, Cam Scatabo, and also we're not betting on injury necessarily with Royals, so I'm going to go after Emeka Egbuka here. Again, I don't like the idea of pretty much saying like Emeka Egbuka is going to guarantee himself on the boundary, and I also don't like guaranteeing that we're going to be, kissing goodbye essentially to the target share for Roman Wilson. At the same time, you don't allow adequate to stop you from going to great or good. So we're going to be going in for the upgrade there and just get a constant threat there in both the run game as well as the receiving game in Emeka Egbuka. At 22 for the Atlanta Falcons, this is where we're going to roll the dice on Mike Green, the personality concerns and everything there. It's been a couple years of him not having a flare-up with that. So, again, do your own research, which technically you can't. There's not stuff online, but ended up describing it enough in detail. Again, not confirming it. I'm just saying what I've been told. At 23, we have the Green Bay Packers. And, good spot to be in. Honestly, really good spot to be in. I think this is a key spot to trade out because I think their best position to target is corner, and I don't want to take a corner here. You guys already know the corner I would like to take. And I'm looking at Kelvin Banks right here, and I think this is great for teams like the Ravens. You could even talk about the Browns trying to move up and selecting their offensive tackle. But, the key thing is that guard can go at 24. Guard or tackle can go at 25. Guard or tackle can go at 26 and 27. So I'm just going to be honest. After watching the Super Bowl and seeing what happens when you lose the battle in the trenches, people talk about, how we need to invest in the defensive line. How about looking at how you need to invest in the offensive line too? Because I think that is super duper key. We're going to be trading up with the Baltimore Ravens. And they have plenty of picks too, and it's perfect for the Packers. And, from this range, I do think 127 will be involved along with maybe a 183. So very similar trade actually to what Seattle did with Atlanta, like damn near identical trade right there. So we're going to make that happen and allow Green Bay to be able to get some extra draft capital, but also be in a better position to draft the player that they kind of should. So we're going to be going and trading up for Josh Connerly, where he's going to go above Kelvin Banks. And I do think Kelvin Banks, I've seen some people say he might slip to the second round. The foot speed is going to be an issue. And so Josh Connerly as a true left tackle and worst case scenario, left guard is going to be totally worth it at 23. At number 24 for the Minnesota Vikings, I am trading back here as well. And you got Kelvin Banks sitting there at 15. Again, kind of just talked about him in regards to pick number 23. And you also have Donovan Jackson, who I really, really like. So he's probably going to be the next selection. So it doesn't really matter which order they go in. But I'm looking right now at a team that has a lot of draft capital. And I mean a lot of draft capital. And that is sitting at pick number 32 with the Cleveland Browns. I mean, look how many picks they have. Talk about a wet dream for the Vikings. Like, not to be graphic or anything, but I mean, just like, look at that. Isn't that incredible? Like, all of those picks. So first off, I think it will be 96. Let's go to the trade chart right here and look from 32 to 24. 32 is 590, 24 is 740. So what is that? 250 difference. 250 difference would be pick number 68, which we're not going to be doing that because my goal for the Vikings is get some more draft capital. So at pick number, was that? We got 116 value. So we need to toss in about, technically that's 134 more, which I'm not going to do, but I'll do it at a little bit of a discount, maybe with a couple of the mid day 3 picks. And so for the Vikings, actually, I'm going to go 94 for that reason. And then we're actually going to end up giving up 165 and 204 because we just don't need that many picks. We don't. We'll go 200. Give them back one of their picks. We'll give them back all of their picks. How about that? So Minnesota receives a boatload of picks to be able to move back 6 spots. And honestly, that's a good value for both Cleveland and Minnesota, again, for their respective reasons. For the Browns, it really comes down to whether you trust Donovan Jackson or Kelvin Banks. And I just think Kelvin Banks is going to be viewed as the more pure tackle out of the two. And I mean, to be fair, I love Donovan Jackson. You really can't go wrong. Foot speed might come into the equation, but we'll go Kelvin Banks for the Browns. Again, you know what? Do what you will. If you wanted him, if you wanted Donovan Jackson, flip these two because I'm going to go Donovan Jackson here for the Texans. I know wide receiver is a key position to target, but the offensive line and the potential successor to Laramie Tunsil kind of needed. And I think Donovan Jackson, with the potential he brings off the bat, is just going to be too good to pass on. The Rams at 26, I'm going Luther Burden. It's pretty obvious that you guys need some firepower there. Kupp probably going to be cut. He said they want to seek a trade, but he's had 2 1,000-yard seasons. Granted, one of them was a Triple Crown winning season, but still, if we're gonna try to criticize some people for living in the past, just got to be honest. There's not like Cooper Kupp is someone who's thrived in Los Angeles' system, and then he's not really thriving as much anymore. Not going to grab a ton of capital, but regardless, I think Demarcus Robinson and Tutu Atwell as well are going to be up for contract. Luther Burden would be great to add into the group. At 27 for the Green Bay Packers, some incredible value here on the board. You got Amari and Hampton too for a team that's looking for a top tier running back. One of the teams I would love to try to make a move up here would be the Patriots for Amari and Hampton and just pair him back with Drake May. But I just don't really see that being worth it in like return on investment wise. You got Ursary and Trapilo as the next best tackles. And so are there any other teams looking for a tackle? You could talk about the Chiefs here. Honestly, the Chiefs, Ozzie Trapilo is like the one tackle I would like for the Chiefs because he is so high floor in my opinion, but I digress. For the Packers, I would try to make one more move back. There's not really a good one. Actually, there kind of is. And I'm not going to do it because they're not going to trade out of the first in their own draft. They're not going to do it. So I'm going to stick and pick here. And honestly, I want to limit the potential for the Lions. And for that reason, the question would be, do you go after the guarantee in Scorton or do you go after the project in Shamar Stewart? But the project is exciting, and it does kind of fit with the Lucas Van Ness theme as well as Rashawn Garrett. We're going to go Shamar Stewart there at 27. At 28 for the Lions, this is, again, where I was thinking about going after Shamar Stewart. I think the value is just too good to pass on Nick Scorton at this point. I know interior offensive line Gray Zabel. You know what? We're going to go after it. Gray Zabel goes at 28 to play interior offensive line because he can play center as well with Ragnow's future in question. I like throwing the curveball there. At 29 for the Washington Commanders, wide receiver is going to be kind of the thing I look at. And honestly, Io Maynor is someone who I really like. And same thing with Jaden Higgins. Jaden Higgins for me is my number 23 player in the class. I reshifted the value of wide receivers. I think someone who should be starting deserves a little bit more of a boost. And so I'm actually going to be trading out of this spot for him. And I'm actually going to make a trade with a team that we've sent our picks to. That's the New Orleans Saints. And you're going to be like, what the hell's going on here? I'm going to get a 3rd round pick out of this because I think we need to. And you know what? We're going to get like, pick 252 out of this, compensatory pick. It is what it is. But you look at the vision here. Just watch this. So we're going to trade up. Guess who's still on the board? So we're going to get Ashton Jeanty and Colston Loveland here for the price of a 3rd round pick and a compensatory 7th. But for Washington, they need those picks. And honestly, there's going to be some really good edge rushers available at that spot. So I really like that. You get Colston Loveland and Ashton Jeanty, basically your Saquon Barkley, Dallas Goedert for the future. Defensive line, we will still be addressing it, luckily in round 3. Really good value there. So what you want to do is build your team up with quality players on cheaper contracts. And so when you have these 5th-year options for players who should be making massive strides, if you do give the leash that I think you should, then I think that you're going to have a lot of success there. At 30 for the Buffalo Bills, another team that I could see trading back because of the pure quantity of talent available here. I'm honestly pretty excited about, Amari and Hampton on the Vikings to the point where I might trade back up with the Vikings. Like, they got a ton of picks via trade back. I think this would be a pretty inexpensive move up for them. But at the same time, I mean, do the Bills really want to move that small of a range back, or would you rather be able to get some better draft capital? And what I'm trying to think right now is, do I just go big brain it with the with the Browns, move up for Amari and Hampton, and then get Travis Hunter, but then again, we're also losing out on the edge rushers, right? And we just traded away Myles Garrett. So at that point, then we'd have to wait. We'd have to wait a significant distance before we'd end up taking an edge rusher. Edge is going to be super key for us to take for the Browns at 33. So I'm not going to be able to do that. I really did want to take Amari and Hampton though. But the dark horse team here is the Patriots. Like the Patriots, you are in the same division, but for the right price, teams do it before. I just don't think the deals are going to be done. I've come to accept that. The deal's not going to be done. And so it's Nick Scorton or Kenneth Grant or JT Tuimoloau. I honestly think Nick Scorton's fantastic. I really do. I think that he just brings such a solid floor. Kenneth Grant brings that ceiling, but I don't trust you guys to develop defensive interior the way that you can have just someone who's super duper reliable here at a more valuable position. And at number 31 for the Chiefs, I do see Kenneth Grant being the primary option here. Pretty sure your nose tackle is up for a contract too. So it is kind of just a win-win right there. Super high ceiling. I know offensive tackle needs to be in the equation, but you guys cannot develop offensive tackle to save your life. I hate to say it. It's the truth. At number 32, we're going to have the Vikings going to Amari and Hampton here. We traded back and ended up getting another 3rd round pick as well as a multitude of others. Interior offensive line should be a focus as well. Armand Membu would be a perfectly solid option, but Amari and Hampton is a super stud back. You're not going to have that ability to get a true RB1 any other time in this class, and especially not at 90, 94 or 96 and 97. So that's going to be the video. Stay tuned tomorrow for rounds 2 and 3. Love you. See you on the far side. Peace.